On this video, I'm gonna explain you the difference between the squared stance and the bladed stance. I'm gonna tell you the pros and cons of both the stances, and at the end of the video, I'm gonna tell you which one is better. So make sure you stick till the end. Let's get started. So this is the squared stance because my shoulder, hips and both feet are pointing forward. If I rotate 90 degrees, now this is the most bladed I can be because my both feet are on this same line. Now I know what most of the boxing coaches recommend. They say never be too bladed and never be too squared. They recommend a mix in between so that your front toe and back heel are on the same line. Now the question is when to use the squared stance and when to use the bladed stance. Generally speaking, we use the squared stance when we are on the attack and we use the bladed stance when we are on the defensive mode. Now let me explain you the reasons. First, I'm going to talk about the bladed stance. I'm going to tell you the pros and cons of the bladed stance. There are two pros of the bladed stance. The first one is in this stance you are more protected because you are providing less area to your opponent as compared to the squared stance. So here your hands are protecting your chin and your elbows are protecting your body. The second pro is you can easily move forward and backward. Like jab, you can move back, you can move forward. So this bladed stance helps you in that forward and backward movement. The first one is good defense and the second one is you can easily move forward and backward. Now let's talk about the cons of the bladed stance. With bladed stance, it's difficult for you to move sideways. Let me give you the example of tennis players. The tennis players are perfectly squared. They can easily move towards the sides just like this. But if a tennis player is bladed and you ask him to move that way, it's really difficult for him. Secondly, with that bladed stance, it's difficult for you to punch properly. Because you know to punch properly with power, you have to rotate your hips. And it's difficult for us to rotate our hips in this bladed stance. If we are in that squared stance, we can easily move our hips. But with that bladed stance, it's difficult for us to rotate our hips properly. And the third one is it's difficult for us to slip towards the outside like this way. Yes, we can slip inside, but it's really difficult for us to slip outside. So these three are the cons of the bladed stance. You can't easily rotate your hips, you can't easily move towards the sides and you can't slip outside. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of the squared stance. There are three pros of the squared stance. The first pro is you can punch with power and rotate your hips just like this. You can easily rotate your hips and generate a lot of power. The second pro is you can easily move towards the sides. As before I give you the example of tennis players. You can change angles just like this. And the third pro is you can slip both sides. You can slip towards your left, you can slip towards your right easily and then attack. There are two cons of the squared stance. The first one is poor defense because in squared stance you are providing a lot of area to your opponent to hit you. And the second con is you can't easily move forward and backward. Yes, it helps in that side to side movement, but it not helps in that forward and backward movement. So which stance is better? The simple answer is both stances are good, but you should know when to use the bladed stance and when to use the squared stance. We use bladed stance if we want to stay long on the outside. Especially when you are fighting those shorter fighters who likes to fight inside. You as a taller fighter use your jab to keep them at distance like Muhammad Ali fighting Joe Frazier. So the answer to your question is when you are fighting shorter guys and when you are on the defensive mode, use that bladed stance. And if you are a shorter fighter, then that squared stance suits you. The best example for the squared stance is Mike Tyson, and we know he was super aggressive. He constantly moves his head to slip punches moving forward and then attacks in the most violent way. Mike Tyson punches really hard because of that squared stance, because he can rotate his hips properly just like this. So number one, if you are shorter fighter, and number two, if you are on attack, that squared stance suits you. Guys, I hope you get all the questions regarding that bladed stance and the squared stance. Guys, you can also subscribe my YouTube channel where I upload lots of boxing education videos for you guys. See you soon in the coming video.